It's the dawn of a new season, a fresh start for some, and an opportunity to reclaim lost crowns for others. It is the 2019 South African Cross Country Series, and round one was the spectacular Mpumalanga 400, which took place around the town of Dahlstrom. All the action is brought to you by Toyota, Ford, Total Quartz, and Pirelli. When the Mpumalanga 400 was first run last year, the race certainly made its mark. Despite the wet weather that marked the weekend, everyone was in agreement. The lads from Toyota, who had sponsored the event in 2018, put on a bloody good show. The only niggle being the weather, which was beyond miserable. Fast forward to round one of 2019, the race weekend dawned crisp and clear in Dahlstrom, turning the event into a picture-perfect start to the 2019 SACCS season. As in 2018, Toyota sponsored the event and also made use of the opportunity to enrich the lives of some local school kids by donating school shoes to them. This ties in with the Tuma Mina initiative of reconnecting with people through activities that improve their lives. As such, Toyota's Johan Horn felt that bringing the race to Dahlstrom could have a meaningful impact on the people of the area.
Well, we used to have the Nkumazi 400, which we now changed to the Mpumalanga 400, which we brought to Dahlstrom, and we're doing it as a community project to benefit the community and for people to come and race here and enjoy the town of Dahlstrom.
The route, while similar to that of 2018, promised an entirely new experience for the crews, as they had to battle through a monsoon last time out, but this year had the prospect of sunny skies and mild temperatures. Not that the carnival atmosphere in the DSP or the balmy weather could take away from any of the pre-event nerves. There were some new faces in Dahlstrom, as well as a couple of team and car changes, but the old hands knew exactly what they had to do. Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Janil de Villiers was fresh from another Dakar rally, where he notched up yet another top 10 finish. But the man from Stellenbosch is also the defending SACCS champion and was looking forward to the new season.
New season back here in Dahlstrom. At least the weather looks better than last year. It was very wet here. But yeah, we're going to have to get back into the swing of things. See how it goes. It's always quite tricky here. The track's quite technical, narrow and twisty. But the car's feeling good. We had a nice test yesterday, and yeah, we'll try and do our best and hopefully get a good result.
Whilst de Villiers notched up the overall title in 2018, it was teammate Henk Ladeghan who took honours in Class FIA, and as such, would be racing with the number 300 this year. In a big shake-up, Ladeghan will have rookie navigator Brett Cummings beside him for 2019, and both driver along with navigator were cautiously optimistic about their chances together.
I don't know what it's going to be like yet. Well, obviously we haven't done an event together yet, so we'll have to see. The prologue's in about an hour, so when the first call comes, then we'll already see what it's like in the car and how we gel together.
Done some testing in this last week, and I think Henk and myself have worked hard at trying to get our instructions to correlate and work together. We spent a lot of time last night as well going through everything, so I'm hoping it's going to work out well.
We also caught up with the 2018 Class T champion Lance Woolridge, who knew he'd start this season with a great big target on his back.
I think that's always going to be the case. Personally, I'm treating it as a, even more cautious. Might be my downfall, I don't know, but I need to just same thing as last year: finish races, get points, and that's the goal, certainly for the first race.
In 2018, one of the biggest threats to the elder Woolridge's title hopes came from younger brother Gareth, racing in a similar Class T Ford Ranger. As a matter of fact, things were neck and neck between the brothers at times, until Lance eventually prevailed. This year, however, would see none of that.
A completely new approach for me this year. We're going to be developing a new car, so we'll be bringing that in around mid-season. And yeah, we sold 2 of our Class T cars from last year, so I only built 1 new one. The Brazilians will be taking mine over from last year. And yeah, I'm here for Dahlstrom to do this race, and then they'll take over from the next round. So we'll be sitting back a little bit, helping the team in other aspects, and then yeah, hopefully in our new car by Botswana.
In the specials, defending champion Kutsia Labuskakny had decided to hang up his gloves for 2019 and handed the mantle to daughter Sandra instead. The father and daughter pairing are veterans in the sport, but even though Sandra had piloted the team's porter on previous occasions, this would be her first full season behind the wheel. But the fight remains a family affair, as Sandra's husband Jaco now joins her in the Agri-sponsored Class A porter.
I've finally managed to actually divorce him now. So I've stolen his car this year, so we're really excited about it. He's taking a sabbatical for this year and actually trying to teach me how to drive. So I don't know if I've got a good teacher, but we'll see. Don't know if he has a good student, but we're really excited about the race, and it's going to be a steep learning curve for us, but we're looking forward to it.
I'm being promoted now to team manager. So looking at Lenol, you do not a lot. You just sit around and give orders. So I'm looking forward to do that for a change.
There were also a couple of team and driver changes for 2019, and probably the biggest move came from Shamir Variawa, who decided to join Toyota Gazoo Racing SA in a third-class FIA Hilux, and that with navigator Jean Moore beside him to boot.
Yeah, very excited. It was a sudden thing that we jumped into Toyota. And yeah, we're very happy. We tested the car yesterday for about 60 or 70 kilometers, and all good, but you know, race nervous, so we'll see today how it goes.
At the same time, some new faces joined Redline Motorsport in their Class FIA Nissan Navaras. Namibians, Jaco van Dijk and navigator Michael Rust have now joined the fray, whilst Big Skalkberger jumps into action, this time with a roof over his head, and Alvin Vonk, as always, on the notes on his side.
Exciting year, all in preparation for our Dakar 2020. First part of the season we're going to compete in South Africa, and second part of the season train in the dunes, and then hopefully ready for Dakar.
So those are just some of the faces that make up the 2019 SACCS. Over in Dahlstrom, it was time to get the qualifying race underway in order to determine the starting positions for the main event, which took place on the Saturday of the race weekend. On the grid were cars in 3 categories: production vehicles, special vehicles and now side-by-sides. They were competing in Class FIA, T, S, A and P and couldn't wait to get the season underway. There was, however, one more formality to take care of before launching into the tight and twisty track: the ceremonial start at the Village Green in Dahlstrom. The man waving the flag to set them off on their way was Councillor Sian Mitimunya of the Emakazeni local municipality, and before they set off, he gave us some insight from local government's point of view.
Yes, it's very much exciting. Remember, I said Dahlstrom, we are a tourism destination, and having sports such like this one is a big event, by the way. And as a municipality as a whole, we are very much grateful and we are honored to have such kind of a sporting code, and hopefully it will inspire other people to take part, especially our local guys, so that they can also partake part in a future sporting code like this one.
From the ceremonial start in Dahlstrom, crews travelled a short distance to the start of the time section. For the Mpumalanga 400, the qualifying race was run over a distance of 67 kilometres, including a spectator-friendly stadium section, as well as plenty of rocks, forest, mud and more. Not that the terrain seemed to cause any undue concern for the crews. They set about the task of completing the challenge with relish, including the side-by-sides, who are proving to be highly entertaining to watch. Now with full national championship status, the sidees had to literally go the distance, 67 kilometres of qualifying and a full 330 kilometres in the main race. In Dahlstrom, qualifying honours went to Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers in the G66 Can-Am Maverick, whilst Ash Bradbury and Timmy Burtis in their G605 Can-Am pegged second place. The Mostert name has become synonymous with side-by-side racing in SA, and this time it was a third-place qualifier for Werner alongside brother Leon Mostert in the G02 side-by-side. In the special vehicles, it was a rough start for Sandra Jonk, who struggled with a lack of brakes on the 2010 version of the Porter, finishing well down the order as a result. Ahead of her came the names of John Thompson and Marisa Matten in their Zarko, with Big John Telford and Victor Nsheki taking second place. But the category win at the opening round went to Lance Trithui alongside Adrian Roots in their imposing yellow bat venom.
Yeah, it was a good prologue. We had a good one. It was very, very tight technical, so you had to be on it. And the thing is to finish all the races, and obviously the objectives at the end of the year is the championship.
Only one car entered into Class S for production vehicles, and as such, all Dave Huddy and Gerrit Skidder had to do was simply bring their Nissan Navara home in one piece, which is certainly what they did. Class T, however, saw a fierce battle for supremacy and its fair share of drama. One of the newest cars on the grid was the Ford Ranger of Richard Leek and Donnie Stassen. The car was barely completed before the race, and as such took part without any fancy decals. Not that that mattered, it was the cooling system though that held them back this time around during the qualifying event, relegating Leek and Stassen down to 6 on the grid. The pair were promoted to 5th, however, when the stewards deemed that Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Reglinghuis, also in a Ford Ranger, had missed out a part of the route. This happened after the pair wrong-slotted and they were handed a penalty as a result. Ford Castrol Racing's Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer were the first car into the qualifier, and as such, they found the going tough, trying to pick their way through the dense brush. This saw them post only the 4th fastest time of the day, 1 minute and 11 seconds behind the eventual winners.
To 90 left. 90 left before. Big left. 90 right, left here, left here. To 90 right, around pink. 90 right, around pink.
Ahead of the Ford crew was Atlas Copco's Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott in their Toyota Hilux. The pair have proven highly consistent over the years, and at the Mpumalanga 400 it was no exception. They ended up just 50 seconds slower than the leaders, setting them up for a good race come the Saturday. But up ahead it was the age-old battle between blue and red, Ford and Toyota, that raged as strongly as ever. Last season saw Lance Woolridge slug it out with Johan Horn throughout the year, and they picked up right where they left off in Dahlstrom. This time around though, it was the Horns who posted the fastest time in their Toyota Hilux, pipping the Ford Ranger crew of Woolridge and Huxtable by just a slender 17 seconds. A narrow margin, but a margin nonetheless.
90 left, 150.
We've had a good prologue. We've minimized the damage from starting right up front, so we'll see how tomorrow goes again.
Yeah, no, we had a good run. Here and there we had a mistake. But yeah, I'm happy with the car. Vanna was spot on. So yeah, we're happy.
And so onto the heavyweight to the SACCS, the Mean Machines in Class FIA. To put this into perspective, one of the cars that lined up for the Mpumalanga 400 was the very car that won this year's Dakar Rally in the hands of Nasser Al-Attiyah alongside Matteo Bummel. This was a historic first victory for Toyota and testimony to the strength and power of the cars that race in the SACCS. Toyota Gazoo Racing SA used the local championship as a testing ground and development opportunities, and this year their efforts paid maximum dividends. Back in Dahlstrom, the car that won Dakar was now in the hands of Henk Ladegan and Brett Cummings, who had a lot of pressure on their young shoulders. Further back, new to Toyota Gazoo Racing SA driver Shamir Varioa found it challenging to get into the swing of things in the new car, alongside with a new navigator and new weather conditions. In the end, his time was 7 minutes off the pace, though a puncher near the end of the loop certainly didn't help things. Skalkberger and Alvin Kutsia also found it tough to get to grips with their new steed, posting a time 6 minutes and 36 seconds off the pace. It was a similar result for Atlas Copco's Chris Visser and Phil Hulserman, who ran 4 minutes and 23 seconds behind the leaders. Not quite what they had wanted for the first race of the season, but at least they were in the fight. Ahead of the Toyota Hilux were two Nissan Navaras, crewed out of the Redline Motorsport stable. Ernst Roberts and Rian Kreiling, and now teammates Jaco van Dijk and Michael Rust, finished within 24 seconds of each other, with the Namibians taking the honours this time around. But onto the qualifying podium. We saw Johan van Staden and Mike Lawrenson posting the third fastest time, just 2 minutes and 35 seconds off the winning pace. The Alfa Renault Duster crew has been steadily increasing their pace, and their performance on the qualifying of the Mpumalanga 400 certainly proved that. This left just the two factory Toyota Gazoo racing SA crews, age and experience squaring up against youth and innocence. And this time, it was youth that pipped the experience, albeit by the narrowest of margins. Janelle de Villiers and navigator Dennis Murphy posted a time of 52 minutes and 7 seconds, just 26 seconds behind their teammates.
Henk did a great job. He was going very quickly. The route was extremely tough and very tight, and so many things next to the road that can catch you out, the tree stumps, rocks, anything like that. So, I just try to keep it safe and keep it on the island. It's the first event. It's completely different again to Dakar, so you've got to get into the sort of rhythm of driving this type of event. And we'll see, but it's good for tomorrow.
The car ahead of them had won the Dakar Rally earlier in the year. It had also won the Qatar Cross Country Rally in February.
Actually, me and Brett sat and had a chat on the start line. He asked me what do we expect, and I said, I think we must just take it from the first call and then build on that. And straight out the blocks it was comfortable, here and there, a few niggles and tricky places. Obviously you can see the car's full of mud. So slippery and tricky, very twisty and tight. So we took it easy and came to the end, and the time was good, so we're happy.
And here it is, confirmation of Lotachan and Cummings' win in Class FIA, with de Villiers and Murphy in second and Van Staden and Lawrenson in third. Class T saw the Horns take top honours, with Woolridge and Huxtable in second and Berthold in a minute, rounding out the Class T podium. Over in the specials, Trethui and Ruetz set the pace ahead of Talford and Sheki, with Thompson and Zamatin just good enough for third. And finally, in the side-by-sides, Walter and de Villiers took the first pole, ahead of Bradbury and Burtis, with the Mosterts rounding out the podium. That's how things stacked up for the qualifying race. But what many people don't realise is just how much goes on behind the scenes to make the SACCS tick. And even more than that, how important the series is to both sponsors and South African motorsport as a whole. Here's the new chairman of Motorsport South Africa, Anton Roux, to give us his take on the SACCS.
We've obviously got cross-country, we've got track racing, we've got the motorbikes, we've got the karting, but I think the cross-country racing is one of the most successful formulas that we've had. We've also achieved some amazing results. If you look at South Africa and what's been achieved in the Dakar, I think it's fantastic for All Speed and for Toyota, but also all the South African involvement actually in the overall event. So cross-country at the moment is the place to be.
With such a strong and vibrant championship, it's easy to understand why sponsors want to be involved. And it's no exception for Totals, Sanjeev Shosanka.
Very excited for 2019, and we're looking forward to relaunching and launching again our Excellium brand and participating in the sponsorship with the fuel that we just heard about.
Pirelli has a long-standing involvement in motorsport, but this year the tyre manufacturer has come on board as one of the top-tier sponsors, as Mark Eatwell explains.
We've got to the stage now where we feel that we need to actually get involved in the series to ensure that the series continues, because without the series we don't race. You can have much race you like, you need the organisation. And it makes sense to me to actually bring the series up, grow it up with that, and in that way we also help the drivers.
Of course, the championship is well supported by two of South Africa's biggest motor manufacturers, that in the form of Ford South Africa and Toyota South Africa Motors. These manufacturers also field the only factory-supported entries in the field, though Neil Woolridge explains that there's still a lot of support that they gather themselves.
It's been a tough off-season, getting all the sponsors and everything together. In this day and age, the economy like it is not an easy task at all, but we're very, very, very excited to have all our new sponsors on board, especially Kestrel, which is all our sponsors are a long-term plan. We've got a long-term strategy in place.
From the Toyota SA Motors perspective, the SACCS couldn't be more important. It forms the basis for its Dakar program, and as such is simply invaluable. Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Glenn Hall summed it up neatly.
Yeah, it's great to start the new year off with new sponsors joining in the championship. We got Pirelli this year, Ford back in, of course Total sponsoring the championship as well as Toyota. So that's great news for South African motorsport and a really exciting year ahead.
So there you have it, the qualifying race from the Mpumalanga 400, as well as the lowdown on the sponsors and their plans. Join us again shortly as we bring you all the action from the main event in Dahlstrom.
The kettle's ready. Pause it. Stuck at work? There's catch up. Was that really a goal debate? Rewind it. Gotta pick the kids up? Record it. Got internet at home? See more on Catch Up Plus. New returning season of your favorite? Hit series record. Want to watch a new movie release but already in your PJs? Watch it on Box Office. You wish your TV did more? DSTV Explorer. TV that fits into your life.
Between these four lines, we've created a legacy.
South Africa win this Rugby World Cup final. Perfect season, unbeaten. What a moment this is. An absolute sea of red for the Super Rugby final.
It's more than just rugby.
It's about the memories we make. It's about being part of something bigger than yourself. It's uniting through sport.
Make sure you join the pride at Emirates Airline Park in 2019.
Welcome back to the picturesque town of Dahlstrom on the Mpumalanga Highveld. Saturdays are race days in the South African Cross Country Series, and this specific Saturday marked the very first race of the entire 2019 championship. The evenings and early mornings in Dahlstrom were already quite nippy for this time of year, but the temperatures were about to rise alongside the action as the 8:45 start time drew closer. On the cards for race day was a tough route of 160 kilometres that snaked its way through most of the plantations and surrounding forests between the town of Dahlstrom and Belfast. The area is well known for its beauty, but the crews would have no time to enjoy the scenery as each of the 160 kilometres was filled with trees, rocks, jumps and water crossings and a host of other obstacles just waiting to ruin a driver's day. To make matters even more challenging, the race consisted of not one, but two loops of the same route. Back in Dahlstrom, spectators and race fans alike from far and wide gathered as the cars and their crews entered the start chute next to the Village Green Cricket Oval, where the ceremonial start took place at 8:30. The real action got underway 15 minutes later when pole setters Henk Ladergan and newcomer Navi Brett Cummings dropped the hammer, and just 2 minutes later, teammate Chanel de Villiers and Dennis Murphy did the same thing from behind the wheel of their Dakar-winning Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. The Horn brothers, Johan and Werner from Malalan, were the next ones into the stadium section of the route and the leading Class T car, followed by arch rivals and current Class T champions Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable of the Ford Castrol Ranger team. Fast forward to around halfway into the first of two loops, and it became very clear that Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings were two men on a mission. The stopwatch revealed that Lotachan was slowly extending his lead with every passing kilometre, and at the 130-kilometre marker, the youngster had opened up a gap of 2 minutes and 20 seconds over his illustrious teammates, De Villiers and Murphy behind him. Behind the battle for the overall, Malalam brothers Johan and Werner Horn were involved in a battle of their own with the Ford of Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable. Early split times indicated that the Horns were in control with a lead of around a minute and a half, but shortly after, the Malalam Toyota Hilux disappeared from the leaderboard. The GPS had stopped functioning in the forest, causing the pairing to get lost on a number of occasions. And as if this wasn't enough, they also picked up a puncher near the end of the loop, dropping them way down the order. Woolridge gladly accepted the Class T lead and started to open up a slight advantage over the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux of Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott. Unfortunately for Berthold, their challenge suffered a blow when they also picked up a puncher late in the loop, and that forced them down the order. Through all of this, it was the second of the Ford Castrol cross-country team rangers of Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer who steadily worked their way up the order. The younger of the two Woolridge brothers closed in on the Class T lead, and with just a few kilometres to go, he managed to slip past his brother, and that into the lead of the Class Ts.
Well done, Gareth, well done. 90 left, yeah, coming, 90 left, coming, yeah. 300, 90 right. 200, 90 right. 190 right around 3. Next one.
In a cross-country race, teams and cars start the race in 2-minute intervals. So the race is firstly against the stopwatch, and only once all the competitors have completed the same section of the course of the entire 160 kilometres that made up loop number 1, one can get a clear picture of the standings. As the times were coming in, the story of the race started to unfold. In the new national class for side-by-side racing cars, former bike rider Gerry van der Bijl and Andrew Katay, reading the notes, reached the halfway mark for the first time on 4 wheels. But the man who wants to go to Dakar had a mountain to climb, as he was around 10 minutes behind the second-place Can-Am of Ashley Bradbury and Timmy Burtis. Bradbury, on the other hand, was less than a minute slower than the provisional race leaders, Werner and Leon Mostert. The Mosterts are old hands at this game, and it showed, with Werner driving both fast and safe to stay out of trouble during the first half of the event. Over at the Mad Maxes, also known as the special vehicle category, the crews were finding it tough to safely guide those big V8 monsters through the rough and sometimes narrow route. The defending champion navigator, Sandra Labuskakny-Jonk, now doing the driving duties, was one such casualty who took way too long to emerge from the forest. She wasn't the only one running into troubles though, as the Zarco Magnum of John Thompson and Marisa Matten failed to reach the end of their first racing loop. The big bat warbird of John Telford and Victor Nsheki did however manage to reach the relative safety of the DSP back in Dahlstrom in a current third place. The gap to second place was around 12 minutes, and that second place belonged to big Lance Trethewey from Cluthlui, with Adrian Roots reading the notes in the big Bat Venom. It wasn't plain sailing though. The pairing had to stop for no less than 2 flat tyres on the loop, meaning they were out of spares for the rest of the running until they got back to DSP. Trethewy's troubles allowed the tyre rack striker of the Masagi brothers, Tahir and Tala, to shine. Tahir was doing the driving duties here in Dahlstrom, and what a job he did at first time of asking. They were leading the overall race at the halfway marker. Back to the production car race, David Huddy and Gerrit Skitter started the race as the only entrant into Class S, so no surprise, the pair were leading the class. But they also found themselves in a decent overall position heading into Loop 2. Behind the fight for top honours in Class T of the production car race, the Ford Ranger of Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlinghuis had a good start to their race and made up quite a few positions, but a suspension component gave up the ghost, forcing them to limp back to the pits, losing their charge. Ahead of Van Tonder, the Atlas Copco Hilux of Gary Berthold was back up to full speed following their early setback and completed Loop 1 with the 4th fastest time, just 1 minute slower than the Malalan Toyota of Johan and Werner Horn, who found their way again after losing the GPS earlier in the race. And with just a few kilometres to go, Gareth Woolridge did indeed slip into the lead of Class T when he overtook his brother Lance in the similar Ford Castrol Ranger. As more and more teams were returning to Dahlstrom for a well-earned rest, it became clear that the pretty scenery was also taking its toll on the Class FIA cars. The brand new Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara of Terence Marsh, with the experienced Andre Vermeulen alongside him, survived a few teething problems to reach Dahlstrom ahead of the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux of former champion Chris Visser alongside Phil Herseman, who were going like the proverbial bat out of hell until a shock absorber exploded, covering the engine bay with a layer of oil. They limped back and lost around 45 minutes in the process. Scott Berger Jr. and Alvin Vonk were new to Class FIA. The former rally driver wants to use this season as preparation for the Dakar in 2020, but had a rough start with flat tyres and brake failure amongst some of the things that slowed him down. They ended the loop 6th in class. Berger was around 4 minutes slower than another newcomer, not to the class, but most definitely to the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA team. Both the Navigator as well as the car were new to Shamir Variawa, but the former special vehicle champion was no slouch as he started to up the pace towards the end of the loop. In his sights was the Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara of the Namibian crew, Jaco van Dijk and Michael Rust. Van Dijk is no stranger to South Africa, but when he last raced here around 7 years ago, it was in a normal rally car. The bubbly Namibian, however, is very quick, and it showed despite a few punches, which robbed them of valuable time. So Chucky, as he is also called, is fast, but at this point he wasn't fast enough to bother the top 3 in the Class FIA podium. Around 3 minutes ahead of him was the similar Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara of Ernst Roberts with experienced co-driver Rian Kreiling reading the notes. It was only Roberts' second ever event in the top FIA class, so his performance up to the halfway mark was pretty remarkable. So that's how it stacked up for most of the field, but we still needed one more question to be answered. What was the standings at the very top of the field? These two positions were of course occupied by Toyota Gazoo teammates Henk Lateghan and Janelle de Villiers. Lateghan was the man on fire who opened up a fairly comfortable gap over de Villiers, but nothing in this form of racing is ever comfortable. With just a few kilometers to go, the leading Hilux got a flat tire, and just like that, all their hard work came to nothing as the seconds slipped away. In the end, Lateghan maintained the overall lead of the race, but the gap to teammate de Villiers was now down to just 25 seconds. Confirmation then of Lateghan's slender lead at the top of the overall and Class FIA standings, 25 seconds ahead of Janelle de Villiers. Roberts was now third in class, ahead of Van Dijk, Variawa and Berger. It could have been more than a 2-minute advantage for young Lateghan at the top of the pile, but instead the lead going into Loop 2 is just 25 seconds, thanks to a busy first part of the race for the Toyota Gazoo racing driver.
Tricky to keep the car on the road, lots of rocks. We actually got a puncture towards the end, about 20 k's to the end. Then we stopped a bit late to change it. Then when we changed it, we made a few mistakes. So lost a lot of time there.
Teammate de Villiers was still in the fight despite a less than perfect loop for the current champion and Dakar legend.
Yeah, we didn't have a good first loop. We made really quite a few mistakes and a few unnecessary ones, overshooting, and you can't turn around. So we had a reverse at one stage. I reversed into the tree in my dust and lost 40 seconds or so there, and then other place we overshot and tried to find my way back through the trees first gear, so that was quite tricky. But we made too many mistakes and we paid the price.
Class T was dominated by the Fords driven by the Woolridge brothers, with Gareth in the current top spot ahead of Lance. The Horn brothers were a little further back and just around a minute ahead of Gary Berthold and Jacques Van Tonder, rounding out the top 5. David Huddy filled the Class S board, but was also making his way up the overalls. Let's now hear from Werner Horn on how and why they lost their lead in Class T.
We lost GPS and trips, so we got lost in the woods like 4 or 5 times, wrong slotting, and we lost a lot of time.
While the Horns lost a position or two, the Woolridge brothers were more than happy to capitalise and were now occupying the top 2 steps of the provisional Class T podium. Here's Lance and current class leader, Gareth.
Look, to be honest, I battled in the whole prologue session, the first 70 Ks. I just couldn't get in the groove. My seatbelts felt loose, the car felt uncomfortable. I just didn't feel comfortable, you know. And then, I don't know, we got into the new route. It was maybe a bit smoother. And I personally actually like finding the route rather than following tracks. So yeah, there were only 3 cars ahead of us, and I really enjoyed the second part of the race. So
as soon as we started, I got into the groove. I just gelled with the car like I did last year in the prologue here in Dahlstrom, and it was really great. We made up a lot of time, we caught up to other guys, and yeah, we managed to get into some open air and yeah, pulled a gap. So I think we're leading Class T at the moment, but yeah, second lap we need to be clean.
The names of the Masagi brothers, Tahir and Tala, topped the timesheets in the special vehicle category, ahead of Big Lance Trathui and Adrian Roots, with John Telford and Victor Nsheki trying to hold on to that final podium. For the Class Gs, the side-by-side vehicles saw the Mostards move up to the top of the standings, ahead of Ashley Bradbury and Gerry van der Bijl. Trathui was now trailing the Masagi brothers thanks to not 1 but 2 flat tyres. Here's what the big guy had to say.
We got 2. First one was about 5 Ks in, and then the other one was about 37 Ks in, so we stopped and changed them both. So it's been a little bit tight, because we still got, when I had 160 Ks to the end of the loop, so we're driving with no spare wheels. So, but we're here now. It's tight, it's hard, it's demanding, but yeah, we're here.
That's it for now from the beautiful Highveld of Mpumalanga. Join us after the break to see who will survive the tough conditions to taste the first victory champagne of 2019.
MotoGP, only on Supersport. Get all the sporting action by upgrading to DStv Premium.
For lovers of the game, this ought to be some game. The Catalans are going 10 points clear at the top of the table. They're going 16 points clear at the top of Serie A. Sundowns surely now on top of the table. Raheem Sterling gets Manchester City daylight at the start of the second half. Salah.
Take your front row seat as this season reaches its climax.
Brilliant save!
Who will defy relegation?
Killer blow for their season!
And who will be crowned champions of Europe?
You thought you'd seen it all!
The Serie A,
absolutely top
the
class.
PSL, the FA Cup, La Liga, and the Premier League. The only seat to experience the most dramatic end to any football season is the one you're sitting on. With Supersport, your world of champions on DStv.
Welcome back to the Village Green Cricket Oval in the heart of Dahlstrom, the venue that played host to round 1 of the 2019 South African cross-country series, the Mpumalanga 400. So far, most of the crews that started the race managed to complete the first loop of 160 kilometres that consisted of narrow tracks, trees, mud, rocks and all sorts of other obstacles just waiting to punish the smallest mistake. And on the afternoon of round 1 of the 2019 South African cross-country series, the remaining crews would do it all over again. Families and friends looked on when the ceremonial flag was waved to signal the start of the final half of the Mpumalanga 400, while the stopwatch started the race proper just a few minutes later. Let's have a look at Class G, or the so-called side-by-side category, who enjoyed their first event with full national status. These cars are small in comparison with the others, but they are blisteringly quick and spectacular to watch. Peter Walter and Sean de Villiers set the pace in qualifying, but dropped back during the race to claim the final podium position in class. Third and the final podium position in Class G went to Ashley Bradbury and Timmy Burtis, who had a tough but fairly clean race. Former biker Gerry van der Bijl's quest to take on Dakar in a four-wheeled machine started off with a fine second-place finish here in Dosgrim. But they'll have some work to do to catch up to Werner and Leon Mostert over the rest of the season. The Mosterts took the lead early on in Loop 1 and never looked back to claim the opening win of 2019.
Very tough run, and if you can remember last year we pulled in here on three wheels. We were the very last side by side to pull in, and we managed to pull the cat out of the hat and we did a first place. I'm very chuffed about it. Very tough. Yesterday we had some bad luck. We had one puncher today, but we still managed to do a finish and we still managed to come in first place. I'm very, very chuffed about it.
The route proved to be a little tough for some of the competitors in the special vehicle category, but nothing could stand in the way of Sandra Labuskachny-Jonk as she charged to the finish. The defending champion found the going a little tough since swapping seats inside the Total Agri Porter. The broken drive shaft early on didn't help, whilst husband and navigator Jaco Jonk suffered from motion sickness during the second loop. So they missed the podium here in Dahlstrom, but at least bagged some points to claim fourth. John Telford and Victor Nsheki enjoyed a somewhat quiet race from behind the wheel of their calcimite bat. The pairing, who finished second in last year's title race, were plagued by a few niggles, such as a leaking radiator. Then whilst driving the last 100 kilometres without any brakes, that certainly didn't help. So all things considered, Telford was satisfied with his third place finish. But not as satisfied as these two, the brothers combination of Tahir and Tala Musaji. The tyre rack striker had a slow qualifying session, but blitzed the field to lead the special vehicle race at the halfway marker. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, as a few niggles on Loop 2 robbed them from valuable time and a possible win at the opening round. Second position was a good result though, continuing the Musaji's family racing tradition and recording their best ever finish since moving to the class. And fans of these Mad Max cars with their long suspension travel, big wheels and even bigger engines would probably have figured out by now who the victor was. It of course was Big Lance Trithui, with navigator Adrian Roots on his side. We know they ended Loop 1 with no spare wheels left, but the Big Bat didn't need any more wheels as the run on Loop 2 was both fast and clean, earning Big Lance the first victory of 2019 and his third in a row after he also claimed the last two wins of 2018. So there you have it, a first win for the Mosterts since the side-by-sides became full national status, and confirmation of Trithui's runaway victory over the Musajis and John Telford in the category for special vehicles. One could say that Trithui was pleased to have simply survived the race, but he was definitely very happy to stand on the top steps at the Mpumalanga podium and spray the bubbly.
A very technical race, probably one of the hardest ones we've done in a long time. And there was no rest. I mean, it was left and right, and even the navigators. I mean, everybody had to work hard in the car today, so it was a tough day.
So that was how things stacked up for all the open wheel categories at the first round of the 2019 South African Cross Country Series. But as far as the production cars go, a few questions still had to be answered. Could the Toyotas of Berthold and Horn do anything about the two Fords' domination at the top of Class T? And who will walk away with the overall and Class FIA victory? But let's start with Class S, where Lone Rangers David Huddy and Gerrit Skitter didn't have any real competition this weekend. They did, however, keep their noses clean and stayed out of trouble to reach the end of a very demanding opening race, which in itself is a huge accomplishment.
We weren't really sure, as I said yesterday. We've been building the car up, got it right now, new suspension and that. And yeah, we went out and we thought, well, let's give it all we got, see what this baby can do, and she's done it.
The Class T battle was as intense as ever, but sadly for Jacques Van Tonder and Sammy Redlinghuis, they were slowed down by a number of issues. Their team executed a quick fix on a broken suspension trailing arm during the rest stop, but the fix was very much temporary, and fearing the worst, they took it easy on Loop 2 to simply reach the end, which they did. Just. And after making the switch from BMW to a Ford Ranger with a much more powerful engine for 2019, Youngster Richard Leek and co-driver Donnie Stassen had high hopes for making their first mark in the Class T battle, but a faulty cooling system and overheating engine, as a result, put a premature end to their challenge. And although Dahlstrom is a long way from Malalan, the Mpumalanga 400 is pretty much a home race for the Horn brothers of Johan and Werner. We know that they lost their initial lead thanks to the GPS problems on Loop 1, so the question was simple. Could they come up with a miracle and catch the two Fords ahead of them in Loop 2? The fairy tale wasn't to be. They were simply too far back and had too many cars on the road between themselves and their arch rivals to make inroads. In Johan's words, too much dust and too much traffic. Fourth place for the former champions is how they start 2019. To be fair, their competition was also flying, and that competition came in the form of Gary Berthold and Jeff Minott, who started the loop around 8 minutes behind the class-leading Fords. Berthold had a charger of a run on loop number 2 and went fastest of all the Class T vehicles to close up to the race leaders. In the end, he came close, but not close enough. He would have to take third-place points for the opening round. Which meant that the coveted Class T victory went to a Woolridge. But which one? Younger brother Gareth started the final loop with a slight lead over Lance, but with just 10 kilometres into the loop, their Ford Castrol Ranger got a flat tyre. The pairing had to stop and change the wheel, losing time and track position in the process. This was all older sibling Lance needed. Together with Ward Huxtable, the Ford Ranger took control of the Class T race despite surviving a scare when the cabin got filled with smoke. It turned out to be a faulty air conditioning system, so besides getting hotter than normal, the defending champions coolly opened their 2019 campaign with yet another emphatic victory. Class FIA for Dakar specification race cars has certainly grown over the last season or two, which means that it is also one hell of a competitive place to be. Shamir Variawa and co-driver Jean Moore debuted in the third of the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux Buckies. They started well, but the Dubai-based businessman got stuck in a mud hole near the end of the race, forcing them to retire. Another favourite for the podium result, the Alfa Renault Duster piloted by Johan van Staden and Mike Lawrenson, were in the thick of the action throughout the first half of the race, but their challenge was also brought to an abrupt end during the final loop. This then allowed Terence Marsh and Andre Vermeulen to clinch the final finishing spot in Class FIA behind the wheel of their brand new Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara. One spot ahead of Marsh was the identical car of Class FIA newcomer Skalkberger alongside Alvin Vonk, who survived a series of punches and brake failures, but still managed to bring their Navara home in 6th place in class, that at their first outing in a brand new car. Someone who would have been disappointed with their finishing position was Chris Visser in the Atlas Copco Hilux. Visser is as fast as they come, but the technical problems suffered on Loop 1 put him too far down the field to challenge on Loop 2. There was simply too much traffic and too much dust for the Northwest farmer to do any better than 5th in class. And what a national debut for the Namibians, Jaco van Dijk and Michael Rust in another Redline Motorsport Nissan Navara. Chucky is no stranger to South African soil after competing in rallies a few years ago, but Dahlstrom was his first taste of national cross-country racing, and the Namibian took to it like a duck to water. A total of 5 punches over the course of the weekend slowed him down, but he still recorded a well-earned 4th place finish in Class FIA. It was a good weekend for all the Redline Nissans. Ernst Roberts, who participated in only his second SACCS event, this time alongside Rian Kraling, were the first of the Nissans across the line. They claimed their first silverware together as well, with a very creditable 3rd place in Class FIA. All of this, however, meant one thing, and that was the overall race and Class FIA victory would belong to someone behind the wheel of a Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. The two contenders may be teammates, but they are also racing drivers with a will to win. At the start of the second loop, it was advantage Laudachan, who had a lead of less than half a minute over his teammate Janil de Villiers. What followed throughout Loop 2 was an absolute humdinger between teammates who proved that there were clearly no team orders in the Toyota camp. As expected, Laudachan and new navvy Brett Cummings were fast, but this time it was de Villiers who went just a little faster. When the checkered flag was waved, it was de Villiers who stopped the clock with a time just 34 seconds faster than that of Laudachan, and this after 400 kilometers of flat-out racing. So this is how it all stacked up then. David Huddy survived the race to claim the Class S, while the Class T leaderboard showed the name of Lance Woolridge at the very top, ahead of brother Gareth, and Gary Berthold crawled his way up into a podium position ahead of the Horn brothers from Malalan. So sweet bubbly time for both the Woolridge brothers as well as Berthold, who opened up his 2019 account with a podium finish. But it was especially sweet for Lance Woolridge.
You've got to have the whole package and finish the race and make sure everything's still fine. So yeah, it's been a good start to the season.
And finally, the scoreboard for the FIA class, which also included the overall first and second position for the Mpumalanga 400. Henk Laudachan came very close, but in the end, South African champions Janil de Villiers and Dennis Murphy shared the top step of the podium once again. So a 1-2 overall finish for the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA squad, with de Villiers claiming a narrow victory over teammate Laudachan. Here's how de Villiers turned it all around.
I made two mistakes, two overshoots, just trying too hard. But I thought I threw it away. But in the end, it looks like we made it by a couple of seconds, which is really nice,
And that's it from the opening round of the 2019 South African Cross Country Series, which certainly set the standard for the rest of the season. The action continues with round 2 in the Winterberg area of the Drakensberg over the weekend of the 17th and 18th of May. We'll see you then. All the action from the Mpumalanga 400 was brought to you by Malalan Toyota in association with Ford, Toyota, Total Quartz and Pirelli.